Turns out the SEC and the DOJ are investigating Alameda and FTX for what seems to be some sort of fraud or misuse of funds, in that Alameda had built a backdoor into FTX, and they were taking clients' deposits and using them to fund their bets in Alameda in their hedge fund.
This story, I think someone had said this online. They're like, if you had just talked about the facts of the story, you would sound like Alex Jones on InfoWar.
You've made it to Not Billable, the Lawtrades podcast that brings you bite-sized legal and business news updates, full event replays, and conversations with legal pros about what's going on behind the scenes every week. Stop the clock, put the timesheet down. It's time to get started.
Hey everybody, I'm Warren Pellick with Lawtrades, back with another weekly news update, joined, as always, by my good friend Matt Margolis. Matt, what's up, the good people? How you doing?
Today, I think I'm living the dream.
Oof.
I think I'm doing it.
It's like it
that?
warms my heart when I hear that. It's so All right, let's take a look at what
I can never live the nightmare. I feel like I can't.
No, if you live the nightmare, podcast over. That's it. We're done. All right, so let's take a look at what we're talking about this week. Obviously, the biggest thing we're talking about this week, it'll probably take up most of this podcast, is the FTX collapse, right? That is the news du jour that is taking over everyone's feed. But we'll also talk about Dave Portnoy and some of his Barstool Sports stuff and some of the allegations coming out against him, and also big layoffs in Silicon Valley and the law firms associated with that. A few of the minor stories we'll hit this week are Eli Lilly's Twitter issues and what Elon Musk is doing in Ireland. That's kind of a story. But let's start, as we were saying, with crypto's, big deal.
Or I cannot stress enough how much. See, it's funny because normally we talk about Twitter. I think we are actually going to be talking about Twitter as a later story. But we're always talking about the acquisition of Twitter, what's going on with Twitter. Now I am glued to Twitter. And that's not the story. The story is that all of these late-breaking news events and everything that's happening as it relates to FTX is occurring real-time on Twitter. And I'll let you intro it up.
But real-time, we're talking in the course of no more than 2 weeks. The golden boy, the titan of crypto himself, Sam Bankman-Fried, who had FTX, which was a public exchange platform, and then the sister company, Alameda Research, which was a private hedge fund. November 1st, everything seemed okay. He was a god amongst men in the crypto world. November 2nd, CoinDesk publishes a bombshell report that basically calls into question FTX's trade practices, something called a FTT, which was their token that they would use on the exchange. Sure. We won't get too into the weeds here, but basically said we think they're insolvent. We've looked at their balance sheets and we think that FTX is insolvent. Within a few days, Binance, which started out as kind of an early investor in FTX, is now kind of a friendly rival, was the number one or number two exchange in the world along with FTX, dumps $2 billion worth of FTT, which starts a rush on FTX, and by the end of the week, FTX and Alameda are declaring bankruptcy. A shocking, unbelievably sudden turn of events. And then the plot thickens. If that was not enough, the plot thickens. Turns out the SEC and the DOJ are investigating Alameda and FTX for what seems to be some sort of fraud or misuse of funds, in that Alameda had built a backdoor into FTX, and they were taking clients' deposits and using them to fund their bets in Alameda in their hedge fund.
This story, I think someone had said this online. They're like, if you had just talked about the facts of the story, you would sound like Alex Jones on InfoWar. It sounds like this crazy conspiracy, but it seems to be. It's not the case. Again, on Twitter, it's being tweeted out in real time. So to add to this story, which is unbelievable, is that Binance creating this bank rush, right? Where, hey, we're going to sell this $2 billion in FTT whatever coin, right?
Yeah.
After creating this rush, and I think there was $6 billion in attempts to withdraw, where at that point I think everyone became abundantly clear that FTX was functionally insolvent.
It was crashing. Yeah.
Yeah. Binance says, "Hey, we'll acquire you. We'll buy you." And then right when I think they signed an LOI and they go into it, and then I think maybe a day or two later, Binance is like, "Just kidding. This is horrible." we're not doing this. You are so gone. There's no way that we would acquire you. It would be it would be a problem. And I think other players in the industry probably saw the same thing. So what we have right now is we have FTX that is completely bankrupt, actually bankrupt, just filed Chapter 11 with its astounding 130 plus subsidiaries, which if you look at that is concerning on its face. the
magnitude of all of this,
the corporate horrors that is.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely surreal. You see an individual whose net worth was in the billions go to zero, to your point, Oren, in like a couple days, 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And now let's talk about the bankruptcy, right? If you don't mind. So in the bankruptcy, we have all these poor people who, and not just people, there's hedge funds, there's other folk, right? There's other folks.
Fallout is going to continue to roll out, right? We're not done with this yet, but yeah, sorry.
It's fine. This whole 2023, you're going to see folks just disappear, not just in crypto, but who had been investing in crypto. These these financial groups that have also been investing in crypto. And here's the thing: is if FTX is the custodian of these coins, right? Like you have all of your coins in FTX, and they file bankruptcy, and now you're in the bankruptcy proceeding. Well, now you're just a creditor, which, to my understanding, which came out yesterday, I think there's more than 1 million creditors in the bankruptcy, which maybe it's a record. I want a listener to tell me if it is or isn't.
Unbelievable. I have bigger questions. And
Shoot.
My question is, this is not somebody no one's ever heard of running maybe a large fund, but, kind of operating in the background and something went wrong. There was a run on the fund and now they're bankrupt.
Sure.
This was somebody who was heralded as the god of crypto, the genius in the room.
The genius.
But that's how he was treated. That's how he was treated.
How many articles were about him? Yeah, you're right.
And I don't know how it was in Florida, but in LA, I remember as crypto winter was starting kind of this summer and earlier this year, SBF, as he's known, Sam Bankman-Fried, SBF, literally had posters all around town with his face on it, kind of saying that FTX was going to save the day and come over to FTX and all these things. He was everywhere and he was heralded galore. But there was a sudden, the emperor has no clothes moment, and within the blink of an eye, crash and burn. How does that happen?
That's exactly what happened. It's to that point. So in Miami, FTX was, I think, the Heat Stadium. It literally is, which is now subsequently being changed. I think it was very similar because SBF was also acting to try to bail out certain players in the crypto industry. You're right. He was being heralded as this hero of crypto. You're right. This wonder boy. Yeah, like probably late 20s or early 30s.
Yeah.
Him and his group of
him
and his group of friends in the Bahamas. Effectively like heralding this Web3 future. And what you found is, I think someone had said this about, because people are comparing this either to Enron or to Theranos, right?
Right.
It's not Theranos. It's not like I have this idea and I'm trying to do it and I end up engaging in these unscrupulous practices to try to reach this goal, which never happens. He perpetuated, at least from the allegations that we're seeing across the board, he potentially perpetuated this huge fraud. That's what it was. So he wasn't a golden boy, if all the facts are proven true. He was a crook. He was a crook.
He was a criminal. Yeah. This is not happening in a vacuum. This is already happening in a year where crypto is down 60%, some massive number, 60% or something like that.
We're not even done yet.
Did we just take crypto winter and turn it into a mass extinction event? Does crypto come back from this?
That's a good question. So I think a couple things. One, I think after Enron, you saw this whole move to instill more regulations in place to never have Enron happen again.
Yes.
I think this will herald a slew of regulatory.
It has to. After everything we've seen this year, from Luna to FTX, if it does not, we have big problems.
Celsius was another one.
Celsius, right.
We're definitely going to see heavy regulation coming into place, or at least a significant push for it, because otherwise the issue you run into is more of these players popping up, doing the same thing, selling snake oil, engaging in these Ponzi schemes, right? Because that's what this really is. This really is a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
that's what I think is coming next. I think if you're a lawyer in the crypto space and you are a regulatory lawyer, also a white collar crime lawyer, you probably do pretty well for a little while. But if you're a regulatory attorney, securities lawyer, like, and also because you're right, or we're not done yet. I mean, a bankruptcy lawyer especially, you're going to be doing pretty well in this space for a little while. But I do think it'll stabilize at some level, right? I do think it'll stabilize, and this is that watershed moment where things change.
Right.
But
and you're getting in on the ground floor, and you're seeing the regulations come out in real time, and you're kind of
Exactly.
keeping up with all that. So you will be on the forefront in the future of crypto. If crypto remains and exists in 10 years, you will solidly know the rules and how to play this world.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's going to be a crazy one, but I tell you what, we're going to probably report about this story again because...
Oh, we're not done, yeah.
I'm not done talking about this.
we got to mint a new bell, so we might be replacing either
the
Twitter or
SBF
Amazon.
bell.
Yeah, with the... There you go. Okay, so on the back of what we were just talking about, it's not just crypto. Silicon Valley itself is, laying off tens of thousands of people from Meta and Twitter and Amazon and you name it. There are big cuts going on throughout the valley, and that's affecting big law firms. So Gunderson Detmer, which is a huge firm out there, is announcing has done 2 rounds of layoffs in the last 3 months. They've cut some 30 attorneys, and it's not just them, right? You also have Cooley has done this. You have Kirkland, which has cut some 20, 25 associates. It's a real, hiring freeze, cutting everything. It's a real chill across the board.
We're seeing it. We're definitely going to see more of it, especially if you're doing tech transactions, if you're doing M&A, because the only M&A you'll probably see, this is me talking like so aggressively on this topic. I'm sure that this is nonsense. I'm sure there'll be more, but like what I fully expect is the M&A work you'll see is probably like company couldn't raise a round, bigger company comes in to swoop them up because it's either that or they're going to disappear. So you get them at a discount. Tech transactions are probably going to be low, if not lower. So if you're doing that kind of work, you may not be in for a fun couple months. I fully expect to see more of that. Also, you'll probably see that generally in the transactional space. I will say, though, outside of tech, it's not terrible right now. So if you're doing work outside of that space, like you may be fine, but we're not done with these layoffs.
Well, I want to talk about also kind of how these layoffs are happening with something called stealth layoffs.
Yeah.
Which is, they're not even letting you know ahead of time, hey, you got 2 weeks or whatever the case may be. They're just kind of sending you an email in the morning, you're out, or how?
So this is what I've heard. So like they don't really tell anyone. Like they just casually 30 people disappear from the firm. What I've also heard where stealth is being used, I don't know necessarily what's happening here, but I've heard, this is a rumor, this is an allegation. I am not such a lawyer for this. I am not confirming this. But I have heard from very reputable meme pages, so that's where my sources are coming from, that what's happening is you see some firms overhire. I mean, that's probably what happened anyways, but they're overhiring, and what they do is they apparently giving folks less work and basically starving them out, where you're like, oh, you're only billing 20 hours this month or 30 hours or 40 hours, whatever it is, right? And you're like, well, that's not enough. And the reason why they're not billing those hours is because purposefully they're not getting work to bill.
They're being undermined. They're being set up to fail, effectively.
Exactly. Okay. And so it's like very stealthy. Again, I'm not confirming it. If you're one of these firms and you just want to just kill me because you don't think that's true, that's fine. But at least very reputable meme pages have told me that that's potentially the case, which at least sounds slightly plausible. Yeah. I mean, in 2021, we saw a surge of hiring. Crazy hiring, salary wars, bonus wars, like the whole 9 yards. And now the script has flipped, and now you're like, what? Did I need 25 junior associates? Probably not. That class should have been maybe like 5 or 6, especially if the work starts to dry up.
Well, kind of the hiring glut in the past aside, does, in 2008 and 2001, when we were in this situation then, when there was all these cuts, it basically heralded a recession, kind of a bubble bursting.
Sure.
This feels very, very similar, no? Like, it feels like...
In the tech space, it does. Yeah, it definitely does. And what they did in like 08, 09 is probably a better example, is they like... I've heard of this happening, is that they were telling folks, like, we're rescinding the offer, we'll give you X amount of money as almost like a consolation prize. Like, sorry, you're not working here.
Yeah.
or they deferred classes where they're like, you're not starting this year, you can start next year. And I've heard, I think Gunderson.
Yeah, not only did they cut 30, they're deferring the starting to January.
That looks like 08.
Okay.
That's exactly what that looks like. So in the tech space, and I will say this, other places are hiring. I have seen other firms hiring depending on the practice area. But at least in the tech transaction space, it looks like it's going to start looking a lot more like 08, 09, especially with these layoffs. I'll if my 2 cents, if it's worth anything, if you're looking for any advice, this is the time to be agile, to provide alternative fee arrangements, to be flexible about your fee, be flexible about how you bill for certain things, right? It could be flat fee, hybrid fee, where it's a hourly plus some sort of kicker. Be flexible, because these in-house departments are having to riff a lot of people. They don't have the budget anymore. So that's my 2 cents, my unsolicited 2 cents. If you're listening to this and you're a private practice attorney, you got to get creative in this market.
And if you're one of these laid off associates, we've talked about this in the past, is this the time to now do some sort of parallel track, some practice like bankruptcy or something parallel to tech, or what's...
Think about it. Like, if you're one of those attorneys in the SBF, as we were just talking about, or the FTX, SBF bankruptcy, you're going to make a killing. You'll probably make a killing. So yes, absolutely, flip it. Now, or if you're working at one of these firms, try to see if you can get into those practice areas, the practice areas that are thriving: litigation, bankruptcy, employment is probably going to be doing a lot of work right now because of especially these rifts and these layoffs. So
and regulations,
absolutely. Oh, regulation, yeah. Secure, some sort of regulatory attorney. If you're like a crypto regulatory attorney, get on the ground floor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
absolutely.
Fascinating. Well, good luck to all those people right now, and I hope that in the coming months it'll go back to a healthier scene. But
absolutely,
yeah. All right, well, let's pivot here and talk about Barstool Sports and its founder Dave Portnoy. Portnoy has been plagued by plenty of criticism over the years,
sure.
And over the last year specifically, Insider.com, or used to be known, I believe, as BusinessInsider.com, has been publishing some reports on some pretty serious allegations of sexual assault and misconduct against Portnoy. So Portnoy went to court, said that this is defamation, and it just looks like a federal judge threw out that claim, said this does not meet the standard of defamation. In fact, if somebody's accusing you of these things and they're a
sure.
legitimate publication is writing about that, about these allegations, you're a public figure and that needs to be known. So a pretty serious case is being leveled against him. If we could just talk for a second, you were bringing this
sure.
up about the definition of defamation.
Yeah, defamation is, I think, I don't know how many defamation cases I've seen, or at least threatened defamation across the board. I don't know if it's just more and more people are like, you've defamed me, especially on the internet. You've defamed me, so like you can find an attorney to go after it. There is a high bar depending on if you're a private figure or a public figure, right? Like that's when the standard changes. Yeah. And when you're a public figure, it's a high bar to prove defamation. And in this case in particular, which again, I think like you're not defaming someone if it's true, if these allegations are true, right?
And he's not denying it. That was never his claim.
I think that's right. I think what Portnoy had said, I think what the judge had said, that you didn't say that the sources were fake, or that the articles misrepresented what the women said. Right. So the insider just reported on what had happened. Right. So that's something that probably people need to be cognizant of if you're filing defamation suit. Like, you can't just file listen, you could file whatever you want to file. It doesn't mean you're going to be victorious, right? If you're just going to file a defamation suit against someone just because you think, hey, like, you defamed me because I didn't like what you said. If it's the truth,
yeah,
especially if you're a public figure, right?
And his whole argument is, well, my sex life is private.
Yes.
Yeah, your sex life is private, of my privacy. Sure, but if you've committed assault or you've committed some crime in that life, and especially if you're a public
I will say this, right? Like, we're not adjudicating any crimes here. I will say that. So, like, Dave, if you're listening to this, don't sue me for defamation. No one wants to be back in court for this.
But in the theoretical, yeah.
Absolutely. In the theoretical, right? Like if it is something that's, I mean, effectively, if these are allegations, I have to report on the allegations as well, right? Especially a public figure like Dave. So I guess it's a victory for First Amendment rights. It's a victory for speech rights for the insider, and it's a defeat for Barstool, defeat for Dave.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, all right. Let's take a look then at some of the smaller stories this week,
Sure.
And kind of pivot here to a slightly lighter fare.
Is this lighter? This next story?
The fact that insulin, a life-saving drug, is so expensive might not be lighter, but what did happen with the whole $8 verification thing on Twitter is that a lot of fake accounts popped up that were verified. One of them pretended to be Eli Lilly, the mega pharmaceutical firm, and they tweeted that insulin is now free. And Eli Lilly, as a result, lost some 5% of its market cap, which for a firm that's billions
massive.
and billions of dollars, that's quite a bit of money. So in response, what Eli Lilly did is halted ad buys on Twitter. And Twitter is drowning in debt and hoping to turn a profit. So for major companies to start to do that as a result,
it's funny, man. I watched this one in real time. It was like Eli Lilly, Lockheed Martin was another one.
Coca-Cola was one.
Someone imitated Tesla. That was a nice one. That was like, I see what you did there with Elon owning the company. So that was something that was warned before this even happened. Listen, Elon, if you allow everyone to be verified, which verification, at least when it was first created and up until now, signified this person is a legitimate, this is the person, this is the, for a company, this is the company, right? You'll have these imitators come in, right, for $8 because they weren't even, making sure that whoever was paying the money was actually the person or was parody or not, and caused absolute mayhem. In terms of the legal implications, people are speculating. I don't think there's a cognizable claim against Elon, but it's to be seen. I wouldn't be shocked if just something is filed because of the sheer loss in value.
Sure, but also just from a business choice, it was not the smartest move. If you're going to get a few thousand verified accounts for $8, right? Nobody's going to do it for more than a month, right? They're going to do it once to make the joke, pay the $8, and that's it. So you made, I don't know, $80,000, $800,000. But then you have these mega firms like Coca-Cola and Eli Lilly and whomever pulling their ads, which is millions and millions of dollars. What did you gain?
Can you imagine, it's not can you imagine because we've just watched it, but like any other company, and just a racist, sexist, horrible slur is being tweeted out. Yeah. If I'm a company, that is a real possibility. Why would I ever want to be on the platform again? 100%. I think Playbill is a good example. Playbill is no longer, I think, on Twitter. And they made some public statement like, we are no longer posting on Twitter. Our accounts will no longer be on there. And I think they probably did, because if there's a pseudo-verified Playbill, right, some fake Playbill account saying horrible things about a play coming up or just whatever about the industry generally, it could really hinder, just like Eli Lilly. So I couldn't agree with you more. Like, as an advertiser, why would I want to be on there?
Right. And if the whole argument was, I'm going to buy Twitter to protect freedom of speech, here are the consequences. If that's your take.
We talked about this, right? Yeah. It's like you can have free speech, but you're not free from societal consequences.
Exactly. So there you go. All right, well, let's stay with Musk and pivot to our last story here, which is up until Elon Musk bought Twitter, the company was making a play to establish itself or make its main establishment as Ireland. In order to do that, the company had to comply with a whole host of GDPR regulations set by the EU. Now that Elon Musk has taken over, he is not complying with any of those regulations, and as a result, the EU is like, well, you can't then use Ireland as your main establishment. Moreover, if you're not going to comply with our laws, you're exposing yourself to massive regulatory scrutiny and possible litigation.
I think it's like 4% of your annual. What is it? Your 4% of your annual global turnover. Some privacy attorney, if you're watching this, can you correct me if I'm wrong? But it is some nasty fine for what they're doing. gosh, why would you want to mess with a privacy regulator? Why would you want to do that?
Is he pulling out just because he doesn't want to comply with regulations, or is he pulling out because he doesn't want it to be Ireland, or what is the thinking behind this?
He still has to comply with the GDPR because it's still present in the EU. I think it's less of a play of like, oh, we're going to do this like dimensional chess, and we're going to get out of whatever we can get out of. It's much more of a, I just don't want to comply with this. I mean, listen, there's also the FTC regulations, or I don't know, there's a settlement or consent order or what have you, and I don't know if that's being complied with completely as well. I think it's just Elon's like, I don't care about these regulators. I'll pay a fine. I've always paid the fine or whatever it is. I don't care. I think it's more of that. I think it's more of you're an impediment to what I'm trying to do, as opposed to I have to work within your regulatory regime, which will bite you hard. I would not. I mean, I don't know about you, Oren. I would not mess with the EU. I would not mess with any privacy regulations because the fines are gnarly. I think Amazon got fined recently for some outrageous amount of money. I think also in Ireland. So not the move I'd make. Not the move I'd make.
If you're trying to build a sustainable company as the new owner of it, not the smartest move, I'd say. But what do I know? I don't own Twitter, so what do I know?
Listen, I'm functionally poor, so I am not. I am not.
I'm a professional writer, so I know the term well. Functional.
I post on the internet for a living, so I feel you on that.
Neither of us are multimillionaires.
On that note, thank you, everyone for tuning into this episode. Yes, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you being a listener, and I will say this at the very end: if you enjoy what you're listening to, please subscribe to our newsletter. Yeah. If you don't enjoy what you're listening to, shoot me an email. Just tell me why you don't like it.
And subscribe anyway. Just do a hate subscribe. Why not?
Just do it. Just give me a 0 every time.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Matt.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, Matt, for speaking with me through this. And we'll see you all next time.
See you next time.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out also on LinkedIn and Twitter to keep up to speed with what we're doing. Catch you on the next one.